Imagine just watching your mouse cursor move across your computer screen all on its own.
Yeah, just completely ghosting across the desktop.
Right. It opens your web browser, navigates to a travel site, picks out specific dates, and just, books a flight using your credit card.
And your hands are nowhere near the keyboard.
Exactly. Completely off the keyboard. I mean, it sounds like a scene from some hacky sci-fi thriller, right?
It really does, yeah.
But that is not sci-fi. That is the actual stated reality of OpenAI's newest software update.
It's honestly a huge leap.
It is. But here's the wild part. We are handing these new autonomous systems the literal keys to our digital lives, right? We're trusting them to navigate our software at the exact same moment that our actual data infrastructure is suffering these just catastrophic record-breaking failures.
The timing is, well, it's definitely something.
It's terrifying, is what it is. So welcome to today's deep dive. For you, the listener, the learner who's just trying to make sense of this crazy modern tech landscape, our mission today is to unpack a really fascinating update.
Yeah, from a source called Kinsoft Tech Talks.
Right, dated March 9, 2026. And the source outlines these two massive colliding forces. And frankly, the contrast between them is just staggering.
Staggering is a good word for it.
On one hand, we have the arrival of highly advanced AI agents that can, like we said, literally take over your computer. And on the other, a completely brutal week of data breaches, exposing millions of highly sensitive records.
Millions. It's a huge mess.
So, okay, let's unpack this. I want to start at the absolute bleeding edge of the technology stack. OpenAI just released GPT-5.4.
Finally, right.
Yeah, in the source notes, it comes in two specific flavors. You've got Thinking and you've got Pro. And two technical capabilities immediately jump off the page here.
The context window being one of them.
Exactly. This massive, what they call a million token context window. And then the headline feature, which they are calling native computer use.
Right. And that million token context, I mean, that is a fundamental architectural shift.
How so? Like mechanically, what does that mean?
Well, to understand it, we kind of have to look past the idea of AI simply, remembering text. It's not just a big hard drive. It utilizes these super complex attention mechanisms.
Okay.
So when you feed a model a million tokens, which, by the way, is roughly equivalent to several long novels or like a decade's worth of a company's financial reports.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's huge. The neural network isn't just storing those words in a straight line. It is instantly assigning mathematical weights and relevance to the relationships between words that are literally hundreds of pages apart.
Right. So it's like I'm handing it a giant stack of encyclopedias.
Basically, yeah.
And it can instantly synthesize the whole thing. Like it operates almost like a detective looking at a massive conspiracy board in a split second.
That's a great analogy, actually. It connects a really minor detail on, say, page 2 with a huge conclusion on page 800, and it does it without losing the plot.
Which means its ability to synthesize dense, scattered information is just astronomical. Like you could theoretically hand it an entire company's back-end code base, ask it to find inefficiencies, and it could hold that whole structure in its active working memory.
Exactly. But it is that second feature you mentioned, the native computer use, that really feels like we are crossing the Rubicon here.
Yeah, because the source specifically notes the model can operate software by physically clicking and typing. And it's scoring incredibly well on what they call agentic benchmarks, which means the agent era is like it's getting very real.
Very real, very fast.
But this is where I have to push back a bit on the enthusiasm, honestly. Because are we basically handing over the steering wheel of our digital lives here?
It definitely feels that way.
Right. Like it is one thing for an AI to draft a polite email response for me, and I review it. It feels like an entirely different and frankly way riskier universe for it to physically move my cursor, click compose, paste the text, and click send all on its own.
I get that. But what's fascinating here is the actual mechanics of how it crosses that threshold, right? From being just a passive text generator to an active agent.
Okay. How does it actually do it?
To achieve that native computer use, the AI is relying on these advanced vision language models. They parse your computer screen literally frame by frame.
Like it's watching a movie of my desktop.
Kind of, yeah. It's very similar to how human eyes process a visual interface. It actually identifies the exact pixel coordinates of a submit button or a drop-down menu.
Oh, wow.
Right, so it translates your text command into a physical mapping of the screen, and then it executes the keystrokes or the mouse clicks. This is what fulfills that long-promised agentic era of tech.
Because an agent doesn't just answer a question, right?
Exactly. It executes a multi-step task across different, entirely disconnected software ecosystems. It acts entirely as your proxy.
And the fact that it is scoring well on those agentic benchmarks means it is reliably interpreting these visual interfaces. I mean, it's interpreting annoying pop-ups, poorly designed websites, complex software menus, just like you or I would.
But infinitely faster and without getting frustrated.
Right. And that level of autonomy, I mean, that changes everything about workplace productivity.
Right.
But it also, I think, fundamentally changes the business landscape surrounding these models.
It absolutely shifts the market.
Because if the technology is actually delivering on the promise of autonomous agents, how are the companies building the infrastructure reacting?
Well, the source actually points us to Jensen Huang for that.
Right, the head of Nvidia, he was speaking recently at a finance conference. And Nvidia, of course, they manufacture the highly specialized chips that power this entire AI revolution.
They are the absolute foundational layer of the physical hardware. I mean, without their silicon, models like GPT-5.4 simply cannot be trained, let alone deployed at scale.
Right, but Huang signaled something incredibly revealing to his investors at this conference. He basically indicated that Nvidia's big equity stakes in OpenAI and Anthropic.
The labs actually building the foundational models.
Exactly. He said those stakes were probably Nvidia's last direct bets on AI labs. And the source calls this a small sign that the AI frenzy may be maturing.
Maturing is an interesting word choice there.
So what does this all mean? Because looking at Nvidia backing off, my initial thought is, oh man, the AI bubble is finally popping. It's like the company selling the pickaxes during the gold rush, suddenly deciding they own enough gold mines, you know?
I see where you're going with that.
Are they seeing a plateau in capability that the public isn't?
Right.
Or is something else going on here?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, a maturing frenzy is fundamentally different from a popping bubble.
Okay.
Think about the initial explosion of generative AI. There was massive, widespread speculation. Capital was being thrown at basically countless AI startups because, frankly, the market didn't know who was going to survive.
It was a total scattergun approach.
Exactly. And Nvidia heavily invested in OpenAI and Anthropic early on to ensure they had a vested interest in the companies that were driving the demand for Nvidia's own incredibly expensive hardware.
Oh, I see. So it was a strategic move to prime the pump of their own ecosystem.
Spot on. But now that we have reached this milestone of native computer use, the landscape has solidified.
Right. The winners have essentially been crowned.
Precisely. The baseline infrastructure is established, and the foundational model space is consolidated around just a few massive players.
So Nvidia, stepping back from direct equity bets, it really just signals that the industry is shifting from reckless speculation to standard consolidated corporate strategy.
Exactly. They no longer need to artificially prop up the demand for their chips by buying equity in their own customers. The market for autonomous agents is now self-sustaining.
Which means these AI agents are moving out of the theoretical research phase, and they are actively being deployed onto the open internet.
Into live corporate networks, yeah.
Right. We are turning these systems loose to operate our software, parse our databases, and manage our workflows. But that raises a pretty terrifying question for anyone paying attention.
Yeah, it really does.
What condition is that data infrastructure actually in? Because if we pivot and look at the events of this past week, the ones highlighted in the Kinsoft report, the foundation we are building this shiny new AI on is completely crumbling.
Yeah, we are transitioning from the absolute pinnacle of technological achievement, straight into the basement of legacy IT failures.
And that basement is currently flooding.
Oh, it's completely underwater.
The source states that last week basically belonged to the breach desk, and it was an absolutely brutal one. Specifically, it hit healthcare and data brokers really hard.
Healthcare always takes a beating, unfortunately.
Yeah. The University of Hawaii Cancer Center suffered a ransomware-linked breach, and that exposed data on about 1.2 million people.
It's just devastating.
And we are not talking about leaked passwords for a music streaming app here. We are talking about social security numbers and deeply sensitive health research records.
The worst kind of data to lose.
And on top of that, TriZetto, which is a health claims processor owned by Cognizant, they disclosed a breach hitting roughly 3.4 million patients. I mean, 1.2 million and 3.4 million. They sound like statistics, but these are actual people.
Real people's most private moments, yeah.
When you look at the sheer scale of these numbers, it's just alarming. We are building a futuristic AI penthouse on a crumbling foundation with absolutely no locks on the basement doors.
It's a great analogy, and that contrast really highlights the asymmetry of modern cyber warfare.
What do you mean by asymmetry?
Well, healthcare infrastructure isn't taking this brutal hit because attackers are using unimaginably sophisticated sci-fi cyber weapons.
They aren't.
No. They are taking this hit because of the raw leverage that healthcare data provides. We really have to look at the mechanics of modern ransomware here. Attackers infiltrate a network, they encrypt the systems, and then they utilize what's called double extortion.
Double extortion.
Yeah. They say, pay the ransom to unlock your systems and pay us again to prevent us from publishing this sensitive data on the dark web.
Wow. And a cancer center or a hospital, I mean, they simply cannot afford to have their systems locked down for even a few hours.
Exactly. When a hospital loses access to patient records, surgeries get canceled, emergency rooms have to divert ambulances,
Right.
and patient lives are immediately on the line. The attackers understand this pressure matrix perfectly. They target healthcare providers because the stakes are literally life and death.
Which makes those organizations the most likely to pay multi-million-dollar ransoms out of just sheer operational desperation.
Exactly. It's cruel, but it's effective business for the attackers.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of how these breaches are happening across different industries. Because it wasn't just healthcare taking a beating this week.
No, it was widespread.
The conversation in the source broadens to examine the specific threat vectors attackers are using to compromise these systems. And okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, the common thread here is fascinating.
Right, so data broker LexisNexis, they confirmed attackers stole millions of records by reaching what they called legacy servers. Then you have the massive paint manufacturer AkzoNobel. They suffered ransomware leaks.
Completely different industry, same result.
And Optimizely, which is a major, highly sophisticated tech company, they were hit by a phishing attack. And my mind instantly tries to reconcile this. Like, on one hand, we have AI can natively operate a computer through pixel mapping.
The GPT-5.4 stuff.
Exactly. And on the other hand, a high-tech company like Optimizely is getting compromised by what is essentially a glorified phone scam. And hackers are bypassing state-of-the-art firewalls just to target dusty old servers sitting in a closet at a data broker.
It seems backwards, doesn't it?
Totally backwards. Why are these forgotten, dusty old servers the crown jewels for attackers rather than the shiny primary databases?
This raises an important question about the reality of technical debt in large organizations.
Technical debt.
Right. Let's break down how attackers actually exploit legacy servers. Companies will routinely spend millions and millions of dollars securing their primary active databases. They use advanced biometric locks, zero-trust architecture, constant 24/7 monitoring.
So the front door is completely fortified.
Exactly. But data is fluid. Over decades of operation, companies migrate systems, they execute corporate acquisitions, and they create endless backups. Often, the old servers are simply left powered on and connected to the network.
Left on, but completely forgotten by the current IT staff.
Yes, they become technical ghosts in the machine. Because they are forgotten, they aren't patched with the latest security updates. They almost always lack multi-factor authentication.
So they're just sitting ducks.
Basically. And to an attacker, exploiting this isn't magic. They use automated scanning tools to continuously probe millions of IP addresses across the open internet, just searching for specific known vulnerabilities, like an open API port running software from 2018.
Oh, man.
And when the scanner finds that open port on a legacy server, the attacker just walks right in. That forgotten server holds the exact same sensitive customer records as the primary database, but its security is fundamentally broken.
So attackers don't even bother trying to break down the massive vault door because someone left the basement window wide open 10 years ago.
That is exactly what happens.
And the Optimizely breach, that highlights a completely different but honestly equally devastating vulnerability, which is the human element.
Right, the phishing attack.
Yeah, the source mentioned they were hit by phishing.
Yeah.
And for anyone unfamiliar, phishing stands for voice phishing. It relies entirely on social engineering over a phone call, right?
Yes, very low tech, but highly effective.
An attacker just calls an employee, pretends to be from the IT help desk, creates a false sense of urgency, and manipulates the employee into handing over their login credentials, or like authenticating a login prompt.
Which proves that even the most robust technical defenses, all the firewalls in the world, can be circumvented by just exploiting basic human psychology.
Yeah, it's wild.
Furthermore, the source identifies a critical pattern here regarding third-party systems. If you consider the Trezetto breach, they are a health claims processor. They are a vendor.
Right.
A hospital might have absolutely perfect internal cybersecurity hygiene, but if they are required to send patient data to a third-party claims processor and that processor is running unpatched legacy servers, the patient's data is exposed anyway.
So you're only as strong as your weakest vendor.
Exactly. The perimeter of an organization's security is no longer just the four walls of their own building. It extends to every vendor and software partner they interact with.
And that interconnected vulnerability is exactly why the source provides such a stark warning at the end of the report. The fundamental takeaway for you, the listener, whether you manage a massive corporate network or you're just trying to navigate your own digital footprint, it is summarized in a really simple directive.
Stay patched, stay skeptical.
Yes. Staying patched means conducting aggressive audits of your infrastructure. You have to know where every old copy of your data lives. You need to close those open API ports, update the legacy systems, or just unplug them from the network entirely if they're no longer necessary.
Because you cannot protect what you don't know you possess.
Exactly. And staying skeptical means institutionalizing a culture of verifying every single request. In an environment where phishing attacks can dismantle major tech firms, you can never blindly trust the voice on the other end of the phone, regardless of how confident or authoritative they sound.
No, you really can't. And this actually leads to a final, highly provocative thought that we should leave the listener with today.
Oh, what's that?
Something that deeply connects both halves of today's deep dive, because the Kinsoft source treated the release of GPT-5.4 and this brutal wave of data breaches as two separate news items.
Right, a massive leap in capability in segment 1 and a catastrophic failure of basic security in segment 2.
But those two realities exist on the exact same internet.
Wow, yeah.
Consider what happens when these two forces inevitably intersect. We already established that GPT 5.4 has native computer use and a 1 million token context window. It can act autonomously, parse vast amounts of data instantly, and reliably operate complex software interfaces.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Right. Now, imagine a scenario where malicious actors configure an open source or, say, a jailbroken equivalent of these autonomous agents. What happens when they deploy these agents to relentlessly hunt for those legacy vulnerabilities we just discussed?
Oh, man. Because currently, finding and exploiting an unpatched server, it requires at least some degree of human oversight, right?
Exactly. But a swarm of autonomous AI agents could scan tens of thousands of corporate networks simultaneously. They could digest leaked architecture documents in seconds, map vulnerabilities, and execute exploits 24 hours a day without sleeping.
It completely removes the bottleneck of human effort for the attackers.
It scales the threat exponentially. And apply that to the phishing attack that took down Optimizely. That breach relied on a human hacker making a phone call and confidently deceiving a target.
Right, which takes time and skill.
But if an AI can process 1 million tokens of context instantly and converse with perfect human-like cadence, it could execute thousands of highly personalized phishing calls at the exact same moment.
Oh, that is terrifying. The target answers their phone, and they aren't speaking to a generic scammer reading a bad script.
No, they are speaking to an AI agent that has already ingested their entire LinkedIn profile, their recent public communications, and their company's organizational chart.
The AI knows exactly who their boss is, what projects they're working on, and exactly what psychological levers to pull to get them to hand over their password.
That completely redefines the landscape.
It really does.
Yeah.
We started this deep dive questioning if handing over the steering wheel to AI agents was a risk to our daily workflow. But, let's be real here. The reality is far more severe.
Much more severe.
The very agents designed to, book our flights and manage our calendars, they could easily become the ultimate autonomous weapons used to exploit the crumbling legacy infrastructure we've been ignoring for a decade.
The technology is here, the infrastructure is fragile, and the collision between the two is already happening.
So as you go about your week and navigate your own digital spaces, take a really hard look at the systems you rely on. Demand better security from the vendors holding your data. Stay patched, stay skeptical, and maybe keep a very close eye on where that mouse cursor is moving.